Okay. So, so, let me see. Streaming, gaming. Let's go. Is this okay? This is the stupid timing. But like, if my camera, like, actually, here you go. Here you go. Okay. So this is not answer. So. I have like quite a lot of things to react to today, but it's short things, and why not? Like, there's a lot of why nots because like, I've been like not following like the gaming industry actually quite enough. So yeah, well, watch this. We'll start with my bias. uh, Vice not biased towards a country fucking videos. Alright, so yokai, I won't explain it because technically I don't exactly know, but like, let's check this out. Yokais are not ghosts, monsters, or creatures. Yokais are simply yokai. This this is actually interesting because yokai is really, I don't know if it's me, but like yokai is really a term that is like, I don't know why it took like this when Nintendo said this, or like why the fuck he found this, but this is actually true. You can feel within the vibe of yokai. That's yokai is yokai. There is no in between. It's really interesting, but I want to learn more.
One of the earliest memories I have from my childhood, at least when it comes to my love of gaming, was my ongoing quest, accompanied by my older brother and our neighbor friends, to completely beat from start to finish Super Mario Bros. 3. I remember a lot of frustration from the nightmarish level design of the Sky and Ice worlds respectively, to be sure, but in time, over at my buddy Brian's place, we finally got to Bowser's Castle, and after what felt like an eternity, beat the game. But we couldn't have done it without
Congrats.
one indispensable
I never
item,
did.
the Tanuki suit, which made its debut in Mario 3 and has ever since made a strong comeback in more recent Mario games. With it, Mario could fly after a good run, float for precision platforming, and turn into a statue, making him invulnerable to enemies and capable of stomping the unstoppable like piranha planes. As a kid, I really didn't question it too much. I mean, this is the same franchise that features sentient fungus, flowers that let you throw fire, sewer pipes that transported you miles around in an instant, and a dragon turtle that tried to take over the world. Having Mario in some kind of raccoon suit that let him transform was just icing on this already absurd cake. But as I got older and my interest in Japan became more academic, I finally started to ask myself, why is this power-up called a Tanuki suit? The heck is a Tanuki, and why does it let Mario do all this stuff? And it turns out that a Tanuki is a centuries-old Japanese folklore creature who had the power to use transformation magic and illusions via either a trusty leaf or their gigantic balls. A creature known in a subcategory of folklore figures known as yokai. This was not only the trigger that started me into a 6-year YouTube career teaching the cultural origins and inspirations in video games old and new, but it was also my
I'm sorry. I have my PTSD about like my stream, the fucking microphone dying. So let me just. Okay.
first
Fascinating.
educationally driven experience in yokai. And the more I thought of it, but it was also my first educationally driven experience in yokai. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that despite being branded a unique gem within contemporary Japanese culture, yokai are absolutely nothing new to the West. See, this is the weird thing about America's relationship with yokai. It's been my experience that much of the United States to this day still sees the hundreds if not thousands of creatures that make up Japan's folklore as something that, quote, only Japanese would understand and experience. I mean, granted, with the advent of Yokai Watch coming stateside...
I think that like when it comes to that, yokai, it's more of the philosophy and the energy surrounding it that only Japanese or really great lovers of Japan understand, because uh, technically, other than that, like you can put a shell on something, it doesn't mean that there's some and you can put a shell that is similar to that looks similar to something else. It will be only a shell, while a yokai is something that is really like you. There is like a lot of I don't know, emotionality to it, you know, like you, it's kind of like if you can understand, but you need to feel it, you know, to actually to actually get it, what a yokai is. uh yeah.
In 2013, and the lessening of stringent localization,
These donuts are great. Jelly-filled are my favorite. Nothing beats a jelly-filled donut.
the word itself, yokai, is now more understood internationally than it ever has been before. But far before that, to say that the otaku and gaming community, if not mainstream media as a whole, had only been recently exposed to the concept of yokai couldn't be further from the truth. If you were a gamer even long before the anime boom of the late 90s, you know exactly what yokai are. You've seen them before. That's a yokai, that's a yokai, this entire game is
It's kind of like you can create like or discover like monster looking creatures, but yokai have their aura and have an aura of their own, you know, kind of like a perfume of their own. That's what I meant.
is about yokai, and that one is too. Yokai, yokai, big time yokai, and that's only gaming. Some of the first anime we ever experienced stateside were chock full of yokai as well. That's definitely a yokai. This movie is full of nothing but yokai, and lordy, this show was nothing but yokai. But despite being in so many widely understood games, anime, and even movies, yokai are still a widely misunderstood mystery to the average person that's exposed to anime and even movies.
Yeah, so for me, the what I see like as a yokai is the image that like is engraved in my mind of a yokai is actually this. I don't remember where it was from what anime, but for me, like this is like the base representation of a yokai. There is like more complex, more stuff, but this is why also, because like when I was searching for videos like about yokai, I saw a lot of like how is it called? Like really scary looking yokai. And actually, to me, it's like so. I'll check it out. But this is exactly the representation of a yokai that is that that I understand. You know, this is a yokai. Further than that, it's also there are also the others are also yokais, but this for me like is why like is there not like this folkloric scary looking like that I saw when I was searching on the internet for lore, well, folklore and the history of Japan.
Yokai are still a widely misunderstood mystery to the average person that's exposed to them. Heck, I've met a lot of younger folk in Japan who scratch their head at the concept despite being born in the country of their origin. Alongside my love of ninjas, yokai have been something that have fascinated me in my 16 years of learning everything I can about Japan. Because, as I'll explain later in this video, yokai are not only a reflection of the pure imagination of ancient to modern Japan, but rather, yokai are the keys for understanding the people's ways of life, how they, in that time period, perceived and understood life and existence. But before we get too deep into that, we have to define what exactly a yokai is, because this very base concept is something that even to this day, most folk don't understand. Because as a post about Yokai Watch on Nintendo's website says, yokai are not ghosts, monsters, or creatures. Yokai are, quite simply, yokai. This may seem like a cop-out
And like I said, I will repeat it, this is absolutely accurate. Like within the folklore, it's you need to kind of like get into get to love Japan in long enough and in a certain way to actually like understand why this is completely accurate. Because like it's not a it's completely a non-Western logic, but but this is entirely true. It's like you, it's just like I cannot like explain to you why this is true. I can tell you that like it's true feeling wise. It's true like it will be false to say otherwise because because from my understandings and from everything that I know from Japan, this is like this is true. Like my emotions just like see this as true. Like these are like the small like this is the beauty of Japan as well, where you have like this kind of like philosophical type of like representations where it's like you cannot there's no not argument with it's not an argument used with words but with feelings, and this is quite the phrase that represent what I'm talking about.
answer to something that seems simple enough. Yokai look like monsters and act like monsters, so inevitably they must be monsters. But that's not really the case. The term monster is derived from the old Roman word monstrum, which is defined literally as a divine omen indicating
Okay, monstrum. I'm actually also fan of words. Monster. A divine omen indicating misfortune, an evil omen, portent, metonymically, a monster, monstrosity, whether size of character, figuratively, I think it evokes fear and wonder. And wonder, that's interesting. But like, so monster actually describes the divine. That's actually quite interesting.
misfortune, an evil omen, or a portent. It's an unnatural creature that's born from or an omen to some terrible event that's transpired. Contemporarily speaking, monsters have always been a physical embodiment of these ill omens or result thereof. But yokai are very different in comparison. Though there are some yokai who are born from or are symbols of evil omens, such as the Nue, with its dark clouded presence and horrible howling that brings disease to whoever hears it, to classify yokai as physical and unnatural would be grossly unfair to what yokai actually are. Both corporeal and incorporeal representations of widely understood, but completely unexplainable, natural phenomena. Simply put, yokai are the explanation for the unexplainable in nature. In fact, the very word itself, yokai, roughly translates into bewitching mystery. Michael Dylan Foster's book, The Book of Yokai, of which I'll be referencing quite a bit in this series, uses the example of the yanari, or basically house squeakers, to illustrate this point. Yanari are tiny oni that appear in households late at night, particularly new or cheaply made homes, who use their kanabo clubs, mallets, and any other sort of tool that they can find to make noise all throughout the house. Squeaks, creaks, scratches, thuds, and slams. The yanari were the ones who were believed to be keeping you up at night with the noises that you can't explain. And that is wholly the point of yokai. In modern day, we understand that these small pop
This is also something that I also love about yokais is that they within their folklore, I haven't like watched much of like I cannot give you 15 examples about yokais, but it's their philosophies and logic that are absolutely absurd and just nonsensical compared to the regular logic that we share. It's like their objectives are plain stupid looking, but they're not. Their way to live is completely completely illogical, like not making any sense, but it adds a logic. And this is like the greatness of this folkloric folkloric tale and these folkloric creatures.
Creaks and squeaks are caused by the expansion of wood, glass, and other compounds that make up a house, which are then cooled in the evening, making these tiny noises when they contract. But Heian period Japan? Heck, Edo period Japan? There was no way of fathoming this due to the limitations of scientific discovery and understanding. Therefore, this simple but unexplainable natural phenomena that several people recognized was given a form and a name. One way to make this confusing differentiation easier to understand is to look at yokai through their Shinto roots. Because believe it or not, gang, the difference between yokai and the all-important Shinto kami are almost non-existent. Unlike our Western notion of monotheistic god, kami are not only not omnipotent, but they're also not, quote, good by default either. Kami are little more than the manifestations of nature, whether it be an object like a river, a tree, or an element, to a natural phenomenon like weather. Kami are spiritual personifications of the natural world, and the only difference between kami and yokai is how they're worshipped. A really good case in point comes again from Michael Foster's book. Sugawara no Michizane was a Heian period scholar who was a brilliant mind, but inevitably was banished to a horrible position in Kyushu, where after his death, he became an onryo, a being of pure malice who caused natural disasters and diseases out the wazoo. Eventually, through pacification and placation ceremonies, Michizane was transformed from a horrible onryo into Tenjin-sama, the kami of learning. Human agency, as the book cites, was what transformed the yokai onryo Michizane into the kami we know today as Tenjin-sama. In the case of kami,
And that's interesting, the connection between like kamis and yokais. But I'm guessing that's what's also interesting, like that opens the door that yokais can also become like change in their form and become part of something. They're kind of like this. I feel like when it comes to divinity and just like supernatural beings, they are represented as this as a slime when it comes to their possibility to grow, and this is really interesting
and yokai, the natural world
because it can become anything.
is broken down into two extremes: the unhelpful, the unwanted, the unworshipped yokai, and the helpful, the wanted, the worshipped kami. It's the difference between natural irrigation versus flooding, health versus sickness, peace and quiet versus annoying sound. So how is it?
And I think that this is wrong. What it says is wrong because you can see it, for example, with, well, there is a kappa right here, right? A kappa is a yokai, and yokais are not like this good and evil Western fucking fucking logic. Japan has this logic of colors, where it's like yokais are blue, kamis are gray, right? And there is no better or worse. There is certain people that prefers blue. There are certain people that prefers gray. It's not a good or bad situation. Not a good versus evil situation. It's more of a blue, gray, coexisting within the same river.
That yokai have become what they are today? How did yokai go from being malevolent, trickster, and even violent negative entities of nature into everything from cute and cuddly mascots to protagonist heroes to, I'm not even joking, lustful icons? To understand that, we gotta go back through the history of yokai as they were born and grew as Japan was born and grew. And while citations of yokai can go as far back as the Nihon Shoki and Kojiki, Japan's two oldest records of history, the real start of yokai was in the Heian period from 794 to 1185 AD. Back in this time, yokai were the broad subject of local folklore belief in the forms of yokai taiji, stories of humans slaying yokai, fudoki, local legends of different origins, and the otogi zoshi, short narrative text with occasional pictures. But as China's Taoist influence spread over Japan, it began to merge with Japan's initial concept of yokai, that being the negative and unknown principles of the natural world. In fact, the need for understanding the unexplainable aspects of nature was so important that there was a government branch purely devoted to it.
Wow.
The Onmyoji, the practitioners of Onmyodo, the path of yin and yang. Vague, I know, but the Onmyoji's role in court was critical. They were the ones responsible for organizing the calendar, measuring time, learning the future through divination, but most important of all was the protection.
And like now that I think of it, yin and yang is the same idea of like yin and yang is black and white. It's colors. It does not represent. It does not represent good and evil within yourself. It represents black and white. White can be your colors. You can do a yin and yang can be your favorite colors or your despised colors.
From Oni. Nowadays, we in the West understand Oni to be a humanoid demon or ogre featuring red, green, or blue skin with one to many horns, carrying around a kanabo club and wearing tiger skins. This, however, was a relatively modern outlook on the creatures, as the term Oni in Heian Japan was a broad label for any sort of vile, threatening creature to society. In fact, the popular terms bakemono and yokai wouldn't even be introduced into Japan until the Edo and Meiji periods respectively. Anyway, it was the
Yeah, Bakemono me and Bakemono, they are the monsters. Like, yokais were never they are like, they're so varied, and they are like, yokais are bound to nature as well, way more than Bakemonos.
sole duty of the Onmyoji to protect the country from a nefarious event that could kill a man merely by looking at it. The Hyaki Yagyo, translated as the Night Parade of 100 Demons. This was a supernatural phenomena where creatures of the spirit world would not just slide into the mortal world as the believed norm, but rather they poured into our world. A procession of every foul creature from the other plane wreaking havoc in the streets. It's believed even to this day that Oni, Yokai, Bakemono, whatever you want to call them, slip into the human world at dusk, a transitionary period wherein the two planes would overlap, that would allow these creatures of the spirit world to enter our own. And the Onmyoji had until dusk to determine where the next Hyaki Yagyo would hit and evacuate the area. To not heed the divination warnings of the Onmyoji meant bad fortune, disease, even death. In Michael Foster's book, he recites a story called Okagami, or Great Mirror, in which a man named Morosuke encountered a Hyaki Yagyo while traveling through Kyoto. In his cart, he lowers the blinds and chants a protective incantation until the Oni pass.
Okay, one thing about yokai and past Japan like art is that like I'll go back a little bit. So this by modern standards looks ugly, but this is a stylistic choice. The thing what they were drawing and what they were representing is were not like as scary looking and as just like ugly looking. This is a stylistic choice that Japan had for centuries. Just so you understand.
So, in his cart, he lowers the blinds and chants a protective incantation until the Oni pass. For again, even just looking at the procession of nightmare monsters was enough to kill. Which is horribly ironic because since the Heian period, the Hyaki Yagyo has become the center of focus for literally every single visual medium Japan has ever experienced. From emaki scrolls, to books, to movies, to video games. Heck, the cute and kid-friendly Pokemon held the Pokemon Center Hyakupoke Yako campaign not more than a year ago, featuring well-known Pokemon, many of which who are themselves inspired by traditional yokai, are prominently marching down an old Japanese town street, exactly like the Hyaki Yagyo. But simply putting out an APB on Oni weren't the only jobs of the Onmyoji of Kyoto's court. Many of them were believed to not only foresee the coming of Oni, but could summon and control them.
Yo, To, Sha, Kai, In, X, Zai, Zen, Yukyu no Ritsuryo!
Many of the more powerful Onmyoji were said to have one, if not more, Oni in their control as Shikigami. These were basically summoned and enslaved Oni taken from the spirit world and made to serve their master's will. And the most powerful Onmyoji in history, Abe no Seme, was said to have 12 different Shikigami at his command. That is until his wife grew intolerant of them and had Seme seal them away in a stone box under Ichijo Moribashi Bridge. So yeah, Pokemon, Yokai Watch, Yu-Gi-Oh! You can thank the Onmyoji of the Heian period for those inspirations. But we've actually covered that in another video. Now, fast forward about 400 years as we enter the Edo period. In that time, the practice of Onmyodo began to wane substantially and Onmyoji had lost all importance to the imperial court. And with that, people's perspective of yokai and supernatural activity as a whole began to change in a lot of different ways. The Edo period, you see, was a time of great artistic resurgence in Japan, and with it, birthed the golden age of yokai. So, have you ever wondered how so many of these incredibly location-specific yokai, like the Kamitachi, who were only really known in the mountainous regions of northern Honshu, got so popular that, in time, they found their way into modern-day anime and games? That was due to one of the Edo period's biggest craze, the Hyaku Monogatari. Loosely meaning 100 stories, well, ghost stories to be specific. In late, hot nights of August, families and friends would gather together, light 100 candles, and tell ghost stories. Man, is it just me, or is there this constant use of the number 100 when dealing with yokai? I'll look into it later. Anyway, it was believed that when the final candle was blown out, a supernatural event would take place, such as the appearance of a yokai itself. While originally this practice was a way for samurai to test their mettle to their peers, the practice quickly became popular with common folk as a way to pass the hot summer nights. But what made this seemingly simple activity so important for the spread of yokai familiarity was the fact that during the 1700s, Edo had become a city larger than both Paris and London for the time. As such, trade traffic and migration from the countryside was huge, and with the people came the tales from their old hometowns. But story sharing alone wouldn't be the only thing that invigorated the people's love of yokai. Art. Art. God, art was booming like mad during the Edo period. And I don't just mean visual art, but also stories, poetry, and other written works. And from the public's desire to consume more and more works of art, people began to look for new inspirations, and many of them found their muse with yokai. Toriyama Sekien, a guy who we're going to be talking about a lot on this show, was one of the biggest spearheaders of this movement. In 1776, he published the Gazu Hyaki Yagyo, or the Illustrated Night Parade of 100 Demons, a name inspired by the old Heian belief itself. In his book, Sekien drew and categorized dozens of the staple yokai we know today, like the Tengu, the Nekomata, and the Kappa, and this was just one of several texts that Sekien would create. But aside from Sekien's books, other forms of media would begin to capture the stories of yokai in artworks like Emaki picture scrolls, one of the most famous coming from Tosa Mitsunobu called the Hyaki Yagyo Zu, showcasing a diverse cast of yokai from the Muromachi period. Then there was also the Wakan Sansai Zue, also known as the Three Realms, an illustrated encyclopedia of life compiled by a doctor in Osaka named Terajima Ryoan. This 105-volume set drew heavily from Chinese and Old Japanese myths, bringing several now well-known yokai into popularity like the Ningyo, the Kawataro, and the Enko. But eventually, people went beyond just classifying yokai and eventually worked them into characters in what are known as kibyoshi between 1775 and 1802. Kibyoshi were pretty much picture books, usually around 10 pages long and making up a few volumes each. Originally printed with green covers eventually fading to yellow, thus the name. But the most fascinating thing about these little picture books was their subject matter. Satire, particularly satire at the expense of nobles and government workers. For example, in the case of the Bakemono no Yome Iri, The Monster Takes the Bride, author Jipincha Iku pokes fun at the complex and overblown standards of wedding rituals by nobles by replacing all members of the procession with various yokai. A comical poke at the standards of the rich and powerful to be sure, but for yokai, this was the beginning of their demystification. Their removal from tales of horror and dread and placing them into fun and comical scenarios. And that demystification came to a head in the Meiji Restoration. 1868 saw the end of the Boshin War and the reestablishment of the emperor's power. And with this drastic change came a frenzy of modernization. Seeing the colonial powers on the move, Japan wasted no time in modernizing everything about itself, from its government to its military to even its taste in food, clothing, and music. And with this modernization came people like Inoue Enryo, who believed it was high time that Japan get over its childish fear and infatuation with yokai. To do this, Enryo created the very first concept of yokai gaku, or yokaiology, in an attempt to rationalize these unexplained manifestations of nature to help Japan continue to modernize, thus gaining the nickname Yokai Hakase, or Yokai Professor. Yeah, just like that professor. Over time, Enryo eventually wrote the Yokai Gaku Kogi, or Lectures on Yokai, in 1893, a 2,000-page collection of yokai classifications breaking them down into kakai, provisional or false mysteries, and shinkai, secret things at the core of existence, basically trying to sort out every regional yokai and the supernatural phenomena that went with them and completely demystify it.
This
In
is
fact,
absolutely
some say that this could have been the
fascinating.
very death of yokai culture.
So, okay, so this is fascinating for one reason. It is because it was an imperial government that was leading this research. Do you understand? Like, to put you in perspective, like it's kind of like in during the modern era in which we're living in, it's similar to America doing researches about UFOs and aliens. It is that's why it is so impressive to me, because simply put, it was not only like democratical government that was like leading this, but an imperial government that was actually like doing this. So there was something to it if imperial elites within the shogunate were like, we need actually to create centers of study to actually to create a steam and let's say like organizations of study to study yokais, like, because basically they were studying yokais the same way that the American government studies space and extraterrestrial life, and this is really cool.
In Japan if it wasn't for one man, an American of all people, Lafcadio Hearn, also known by his Japanese name Koizumi Yakumo. Hearn was enraptured by Japan's yokai and the regional stories that came with them. And as a respected teacher and intellectual, his books on yokai such as Kwaidan, Glimpses of Unfamiliar Japan, In Ghostly Japan, and Shadow Wings were so well put together and entertaining that they were translated back into Japanese and took the country by storm, reinvigorating the people's love of their past in the form of various yokai and ghost stories. And that's when something clicked. Yokai, in essence, had come full circle. It was the mid-90s at this point, and Japan had changed. A lot. No longer a country of rural community and reverence for nature, but rather...
It didn't. It really didn't. But in a good way. Like, in a good way. If you study history. They, like, the changes that he talks about is true, but it really didn't. And this is the greatness of Japan.
a postmodern juggernaut who some in Japan thought lost its way. After World War II's devastation and Japan's economic explosion and industrial expansion, the yokai became the literal poster child for a nostalgic Japan. For those who wanted to remember and study the old ways of life, from the Heian courts to the Renaissance of Edo, yokai represented the beliefs, fears, and the phenomena that they experienced over the entirety of the country's existence. It was now yokai that feared humans, fearing for modernization, fearing that they would be forgotten. But yokai told modern Japan how they used to be, and how they used to think back in their ancient days. And because of this, yokai had to be preserved. They had to be studied. And now we have the great yokai boom of the mid-1900s. New titans of yokai culture and its preservation rose up, such as Shigeru Mizuki and his still-running series Gegege no Kitaro, alongside Kappa no Sanpei and Akuma-kun. Though I may make him sound like a footnote in this video, Mizuki is believed by many, myself included, to be one of the few folk responsible for the reinvigoration of yokai in the public eye, bringing Japan's folklore creatures back into the spotlight for a brand new generation. But he wasn't the only one. There was also Komatsu Kazuhiko, who developed a new form of yokai gaku, which focused on the relationship between human and yokai, how the two interacted, and how Japan's ancient population created yokai as a reflection of their own beliefs, even becoming the head director of the Nichibunkin International Research Center for Japanese Studies in 2012, a government-sponsored research field for the understanding of ancient Japan. Finally, there's Kyogoku Natsuhiko, a literary and yokai celebrity with his bestseller Ubume no Natsu, featuring the aforementioned yokai Ubume, his published roundtable discussion Yokai Baka or Yokai Crazy in 2001, and
finally, there's Gigok that actually promotes animes and so many animes so well that he actually like keeps on promoting the yokai the yokai culture. But in more seriousness, anime these days, because of the boom of anime, worldwide actually will make yokais become stay relevant forever.
Finally, his tri-annual journal known as Kai the Strange, the only magazine dedicated to yokai. And now, here we are in 2019, and yokai are freaking everywhere. What, you don't believe me? Well, check this out. Yokai are officially in Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Yokai Watch, Princess Mononoke, Mario, Fake Grand Order, Magic the Gathering, Persona, Mega Man, Okami, Power Rangers, Tekken, Harry Potter, Kirby, Inuyasha, Animal Crossing, Spirited Away. You want me to go on? Well, that's what we plan to do on this show. Breaking down some of the most unexpected characters from media and their yokai origins to get a better understanding of not only where they come from, but what they can teach us. Yokai are now everywhere, not just Japan, but all over the world. You just have to watch out for them.
You, yokais can teach you a lot of things, but do you know what they cannot teach you? And only I can teach you. Something that I forgot. I wanted to do a joke, but like, yeah, forget about it. You'll never know. You'll never know. Whatever. Could have to teach to you.
For now, I got a ton of people to thank. First and foremost, Matthew Meyer for his impeccable art and information. Seriously, if you're wanting to research yokai, this man's books are the best places to start. I consider him the modern Sekian. And while you're at it, pick up Michael Dylan Foster's The Book of Yokai. Most of my research came from there, and I barely scratched the surface. Big shoutouts to Volta Base, Dark Moon, The Gecko Ninja, and No Block Remix for their artistic contributions to the series.
Okay, so this was a great video. Like, there is nothing like I want to check out what the fuck this dude is doing other than that. So yeah, interesting stuff. Interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Gaijin Goombah, for your video. This is actually really, really, really good. I wanted to get into, because like the other, like when it comes to yokai, yokais, I'll say yokais. Basically, like there's like a lot of other videos that are like an hour long that I want to get into, but like for this for the stream, I didn't want it to fucking like overdo it, and like, and I'm already tired, so yeah. Let's skip. Thank you so much for this info. This is great art when it comes to historical journalism. Thank you so much, Gaijin Goombah.